They called her the Ghost Omega, so weak her scent barely existed. So worthless, even the patrol wolves wouldn't waste their breath mocking her anymore. But when Lyra Winters spent her last 3 copper coins at the slave auction to save a dying prisoner, she had no idea she'd just purchased the Alpha King himself, or that his mark would transform her from the pack's greatest shame into its most powerful Luna. The autumn wind carried the stench of fear and blood across Thornhaven's market square, where wolves from 3 neighboring packs had gathered for the monthly auction. Lyra pressed herself against the cold stone wall at the crowd's edge, her thin shawl doing little to hide her trembling not from cold, but from the hostile scents surrounding her. "Move aside, ghost," growled a beta female, shoving past her. "You're contaminating the air with your weakness." Lyra stumbled but caught herself, keeping her eyes down. 23 years of being the pack's Omega had taught her that invisibility meant survival. Born without the ability to shift, with a scent so faint other wolves could barely detect her, she was an anomaly, a burden the Silvermoon pack only tolerated because law forbade killing Omegas. At the square's center, Beta Commander Thorn stood beside a raised wooden platform, his scarred face twisted in satisfaction. The crowd's excitement turned rabid as guards dragged a figure onto the stage. "What's happening, Lyra?" whispered a small voice. Lyra glanced down at Pip, the 8-year-old orphan she'd been secretly feeding since last winter. Like her, he was packless, unwanted, though at least he could shift. She'd found him scavenging near her cottage and couldn't turn him away. "Nothing good," she murmured, but found herself rising on her toes to see over the crowd. The prisoner was massive, even bent and chained. Iron shackles, spelled with wolfsbane-soaked metal, bound his wrists and ankles. His clothes hung in tatters, revealing a torso covered in savage wounds, claw marks that went bone deep, burns that looked fresh. But it was his stillness that struck her most. While any normal wolf would be snarling or cowering, he stood with an eerie calm, as if the pain didn't exist. "Behold!" Thorn's voice boomed across the square. "A rogue alpha caught hunting in restricted lands. No pack claims him. No territory wants him. The Council of Elders has decreed 7 silver coins for his servitude, or he'll be executed at sunset. He have his—" The crowd erupted in vicious laughter. Lyra saw several alphas from visiting packs exchange amused glances. A rogue alpha was worse than an omega. At least omegas knew their place. 7 silver? Someone called out. "For that rabid dog? I wouldn't pay 7 copper. Look at him," another sneered. "Probably gone feral. They always do, these packless ones." And the prisoner hadn't moved, hadn't even lifted his head, but Lyra caught something, a slight shift in his shoulders, a subtle intake of breath. He was conscious, aware, enduring every word. 5 silver coins, Thorn announced when no one bid. "Surely someone needs a guard dog?" More laughter. Someone threw a rotten apple that struck the prisoner's shoulder. He didn't flinch, but Lyra saw fresh blood seep through his shirt where the impact hit an open wound. 3 silver. Thorn's voice grew frustrated. "Final offer." Silence stretched. The crowd was here for entertainment, not purchase. 3 copper coins. Then, Thorn snarled, "Anyone? Or shall we proceed directly to execution?" The words left Lyra's mouth before her brain could stop them. "I'll take him." The square fell silent so completely that Lyra could hear her own heartbeat thundering in her chest. Every eye turned to her, hundreds of wolves, from alphas to betas to the few omegas brave enough to attend, all staring at the ghost omega who dared to speak. Thorn's scarred face contorted in disbelief. "What did you say?" Lyra's legs shook as she pushed through the crowd, her hand clutching the 3 copper coins she'd saved for next month's heat suppressants. Pasalo. Without them, she'd suffer through the agony alone, but something about the prisoner's stillness, his refusal to break despite everything it called to something deep in her chest. 3 copper coins, she repeated, her voice barely a whisper. "You said 3 copper coins." The laughter started slowly, then erupted into a roar. Wolves doubled over, pointing at her, tears streaming down their faces. "The ghost thinks she can control an alpha," someone howled. "She can't even shift. He'll tear her apart." Maybe that's her planned suicide by rogue. Thorn stalked to the platform's edge, his yellow eyes gleaming with cruel amusement. Lyra Winters, you can barely feed yourself. You live in that rotting shack by the Deadlands. What possible use could you have for a slave? That's my business, Lyra said, surprising herself with the steadiness in her voice. This is ridiculous, Thorn sneered. You're an Omega. You have no rights to— The auction laws are clear, a cold voice interrupted. Elder Sage Morwen of the Neutral Moonstone Pack stepped forward, her ancient face impassive. She was here as witness to ensure fair proceedings. Anyone with payment may bid, even Omegas. Thorn's jaw clenched. The Moonstone Elder's word was law in market matters. Fine, he spat. When this rabid dog rips out your throat, don't come crying to the pack for help. Lyra climbed the platform steps, her worn boots catching on splinters. This close, she could see the prisoner clearly. Beneath the dirt and blood, his features were sharp, almost aristocratic. His hair, matted with dried blood, might have been dark gold. But it was his scent, or lack thereof, that made her freeze. Like her, he barely had one. Just the faintest whisper of something wild, something that reminded her of winter storms and ancient forests. How could an alpha have such a weak scent? She held out the 3 copper coins with trembling fingers. Thorn snatched them, his claws deliberately scratching her palm. Release him, Elder Morwen commanded. Thorn unlocked the shackles with obvious reluctance. The moment the wolfsbane-soaked iron fell away, the prisoner swayed. Lyra instinctively reached out, offering her shoulder for support. He was burning with fever, his skin almost scalding through his torn shirt. For the first time, he lifted his head. His eyes met hers, not the typical gold or amber of an alpha, but a deep violet, like twilight skies. They widened slightly, focusing on her face with an intensity that made her stomach flip. Can you walk? She whispered. He tilted his head, and she realized with sinking dread that he might not speak their language. Some of the wild packs from the far north had their own dialects. Come, she said simply, gesturing toward the market's edge. He took a step, stumbled, and would have fallen if she hadn't caught him. The crowd roared with fresh laughter as the tiny Omega supported the massive Alpha's weight. Pip, she called to the boy. Help me. Together, they managed to guide the prisoner away from the square, the crowd's mockery following them like a pack of hunting wolves. The path to Lyra's cottage stretched endlessly through the Deadlands, the barren territory between pack boundaries where only outcasts lived. The prisoner grew heavier with each step, his breathing increasingly labored. Pip struggled to support his other side, the boy's small frame trembling with effort. Is he dying? Pip whispered, glancing up at the man's gray-tinged face. No, Lyra said firmly, though she wasn't sure. The wounds on his torso were festering, and she could smell the sickly sweetness of infection. But worse was the strange black veining, spreading from a wound on his ribs. It looked like poison, but unlike any she'd seen. They'd barely made it halfway when he stopped walking, his violet eyes fixed on the tree line ahead, then back to her face. She could see him calculating, measuring the distance to freedom. You can go, Lyra found herself saying. I won't stop you, Pip gasped. Lyra, no. We need him to— To what? She asked gently. We both know I didn't buy him to be a slave. The prisoner stared at her, clearly not understanding her words, but perhaps catching her meaning. Lyra stepped back, releasing his arm. She even turned away, giving him privacy to run if he chose. Behind her, she heard movement, a stumble, a harsh breath, then a heavy thud. She spun to find him face down in the dirt, unconscious. He chose to stay, Pip said wonderingly. He collapsed, Lyra corrected, but her heart was racing. Together, they managed to drag him the final distance to her cottage, a tiny, weathered structure that barely kept out the rain. She'd inherited it from her grandmother, the previous pack healer before the Silvermoon pack decided they didn't need an Omega's help. Inside, she laid him on her threadbare rug near the hearth. By firelight, his wounds looked even worse. Whatever had attacked him had been thorough. These weren't random injuries but systematic torture. Lyra gathered her meager supplies: willow bark for fever, honey for infection, spider silk for binding. As she worked, she noticed something odd. The worst wound, the one with black veins, had a perfect pattern like a cursed sigil. "Pip, I need moonwort from the garden," she said. "An elderflower, if any survived the frost." As the boy ran out, Lyra placed her hands on the prisoner's burning forehead. She closed her eyes and reached for the gift she'd hidden all her life. The reason her grandmother had really been exiled, the secret that would mean death if discovered. Warmth pooled in her palms, soft and golden. But the moment her healing touched the black wound, agony shot up her arms. She jerked back with a gasp. The poison wasn't just killing him. It was designed to kill anyone who tried to heal him. "Lyra?" Pip had returned, arms full of herbs. "Your nose is bleeding." She wiped the blood away, mind racing. This wasn't ordinary wolfsbane or silver poisoning. This was something far worse, a hex designed specifically for alphas, probably by someone who knew exactly what they were doing. The prisoner stirred, a low groan escaping his lips. His eyes fluttered open, unfocused and glazed with fever. He spoke fluid words in a language she didn't recognize, though she caught what might have been a name. "Kaelin, is that you?" she asked. "Kaelin?" His gaze sharpened momentarily, locking onto her face. Then his eyes did something impossible. They flickered from violet to pure silver, the color of moonlight on snow. Before she could react, his hand shot out, gripping her wrist, not painfully, but desperately, like a drowning man grasping for shore. He pulled her closer, his breath hot against her neck as he inhaled deeply. "Mine," he rasped in accented common tongue, the first word she'd understood. Then his teeth grazed her throat, and Lyra's world exploded into sensation she couldn't name. Lyra jerked away from Kaelin's teeth, her heart hammering. He'd fallen unconscious again, but where his mouth had touched her throat, her skin tingled with strange electricity. She pressed trembling fingers to the spot, expecting to find broken skin, but there was nothing, just that persistent, warm, tingling. "Tires. Lyra, he's getting worse," Pip said urgently. "Pyre." The boy was right. Kaelin's breathing had become shallow, rattling in his chest. The black veins from the cursed wound were spreading visibly now, creeping across his torso like living shadows. His skin had gone from gray to nearly translucent, and she could see his pulse fluttering weakly at his throat. "Go to bed, Pip," she said quietly. "Now." Her tone brooked no argument. "Lock your door and don't come out until morning, no matter what you hear." The boy's eyes widened with understanding. He'd seen her grandmother work before, knew there were some things better left unwitnessed. He scurried to the cottage's small back room, and she heard the heavy bar fall into place. Alone with the dying alpha, Lyra made her choice. She knelt beside him and placed both palms flat against his chest, directly over the spreading poison. Then she reached deep inside herself, past the carefully constructed walls she'd built, past 23 years of hiding, to the golden core of power that pulsed in her soul. The healing light that erupted from her hands was nothing like the gentle warmth she'd used before. This was solar fire, pure life force that lit up the cottage like midday Sunday. She gasped as it poured out of her more power than she'd ever dared channel. The black veins fought back viciously. She could feel the curse's intelligence, its malevolent purpose. It had been crafted by an expert, designed not just to kill, but to corrupt an alpha's very essence, turning their own strength against them. But beneath the poison, she felt something else, Kaelin's wolf. It was unlike any wolf spirit she'd ever sensed. Where normal wolves felt wild and primal, his felt ancient, regal, touched by something greater. It called to her power, recognizing it not as foreign but as complementary, two halves of something whole. Their energies merged, and suddenly she could see everything. The curse's source, a dagger coated in corrupted wolfsbane and dark magic. The one who'd wielded it, a figure in ceremonial robes, whose face was hidden. And most shockingly, Kaelin's true identity. Images flooded her mind. A massive palace made of moonstone and obsidian, thousands of wolves bowing in perfect synchronization, a throne of woven silver branches, and Kaelin seated upon it wearing a crown of stars. The Alpha King. The one who ruled not just a pack, but all the northern territories, whose bloodline traced back to the first wolves themselves. The revelation nearly broke her concentration, but his wolf spirit wrapped around hers, steadying her. Together, they pushed against the curse. The black veins began to retreat, hissing like living things as her golden light burned them away. She saw more as their spirits remained entwined. His capture had been planned, betrayed by someone close. They'd used the curse to suppress his scent, his power, making him appear as just another rogue alpha. He'd been traveling in secret to investigate reports of Omega disappearances when the ambush came. The last of the poison burned away, and Lyra collapsed backward, gasping. She'd never used so much power at once. Her vision swam, her body feeling hollowed out like a dried gourd. But Kaelin, his color was returning, his breathing deepening into natural sleep rather than the edge of death. She'd saved the Alpha King. The terror of that realization was overwhelming. When he woke, when he returned to his palace, would he have her killed for seeing him weak? For an Omega daring to touch him? The North was even stricter about hierarchy. Than the South Omegas, there weren't even allowed to make eye contact with Alphas. But as she watched him sleep, his face peaceful now, she couldn't bring herself to regret it. Lyra dozed fitfully in her chair by the fire, starting awake every time Kaelin stirred. Near dawn, his breathing changed, becoming deeper, more rhythmic. His eyes snapped open, but they weren't violet anymore. They blazed pure silver, the color of his wolf. He sat up slowly, his movements predatory in their grace. When his gaze fixed on her, Lyra felt like prey being evaluated by a hunter. He inhaled deeply, and his expression shifted to confusion. "Your scent," he said in perfectly accented common tongue, his voice a low rumble. "Why can I barely?" He moved faster than her eyes could track, suddenly kneeling before her chair, his face inches from her throat. This time, when he breathed her in, a growl rumbled from deep in his chest. "Impossible," he whispered. "You're an Omega, but your scent, it's like moonlight, hidden, but there." "Please," Lyra whispered. "You're scaring me." His eyes flickered, silver fading back to violet. Forgive me. The healing, your power, it's awakened something in my wolf process. Something I thought was just a legend." He pulled back slightly, but his hands gripped the arms of her chair, caging her in. "You saved me. Do you know what that means?" "The curse should have killed anyone who tried to heal it." "I'm good with herbs," she said weakly. "Herbs?" He laughed, the sound dark and rich. "Little moon, I felt your soul touch mine. That wasn't herbs." "Little moon?" The endearment in his language made her shiver. "I don't know what you're talking about, don't you?" His thumb brushed her throat, right where he'd touched her the night before. "I marked you. In my delirium, my wolf recognized what you are and marked you. I can feel it now, the bond trying to form." "That's not possible," Lyra breathed. "I'm just an Omega, a broken one who can't even shift." "Broken?" His eyes flashed dangerously. "Who told you that?" Before she could answer, pain lanced through her body. Not gradual, but immediate and overwhelming, as if every bone decided to break simultaneously. She screamed, falling forward out of the chair. Kaelin caught her, his arms strong and steady. "No, no, no," he muttered. "It's too soon. The mark I wasn't in my right mind. It's forcing your first shift." "First shift?" she gasped between waves of agony. "I can't shift. I've never—" "Because they lied to you," he snarled. "You're not just an Omega. I can feel it now, what you really are." Her spine arched as something inside her began to tear free. She could feel her wolf not absent as she'd always believed, but caged, bound by something she couldn't understand. "Listen to me," Kaelin commanded, his alpha voice cutting through her pain. "Don't fight it. Your wolf has been sleeping, waiting. Let her free." "I can't." Tears streamed down her face. "If I'm different, if they find out, I'll protect you." his forehead pressed to hers. I swear on my crown, on my throne, on the moon herself, I will protect you. Another wave of agony hit, and Lyra felt her consciousness fragmenting. In desperation, she pressed her face into Kaelin's neck, seeking comfort. His scent stronger now. Like winter storms, an ancient power flooded her senses. Her teeth ached, lengthening into fangs she'd never had before. Acting on pure instinct, on a need she didn't understand, she bit down on the junction between his neck and shoulder. Kaelin went rigid, a sound escaping him that was part growl, part moan. Yes, he breathed, complete it, make us equal. The moment her fangs pierced his skin, the world exploded. Power rushed between them, not just the healing light she knew, but something wilder, older. She could taste his essence, feel his memories, his emotions. The Alpha King, the most powerful wolf in 7 territories, and he was choosing to let an Omega mark him in return. The cabin filled with blinding silver light as their bond snapped into place, not the one-sided claiming he'd started in his fever, but a true mate bond, 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 but a true mate bond. Equal and eternal. When the light faded, Lyra found herself still human, but fundamentally changed. She could feel her wolf now, not absent, but present, prowling just beneath her skin. The pain was gone, replaced by a strange sense of completeness she'd never experienced. Kaelin pulled back, his violet eyes wide with shock. Blood trickled from the mark she'd left on his neck, a perfect crescent that already glowed faintly with silver light. You bit me, he said, wonder in his voice. An Omega bit an Alpha King. I'm sorry, Lyra immediately stammered. I didn't mean. I don't know what came over me. He silenced her with a finger to her lips. Do you know what you've done? In 1,000 years of recorded history, no Omega has ever been strong enough to mark an Alpha. It shouldn't be possible. Maybe I'm not really an Omega, she whispered. No, he said firmly. You are an Omega, but also something more. Something that was hidden, suppressed. His thumb traced her cheekbone. The lunar Omega, Posh. The what? Before he could answer, Pip's scream pierced the morning air. Lyra was on her feet instantly, Kaelin beside her. They burst out of the cottage to find the boy cornered against the garden wall by 3 massive wolves. Not rogues. These wore the ceremonial leather of the Silvermoon Pack enforcers. Stand down, Kaelin commanded, his alpha voice rolling with power. The wolves laughed. Actually laughed. Which meant they were strong enough to partially resist an alpha's command. They shifted to human form, revealing Thorn and 2 of his lieutenants. Well, Thorn sneered. The Ghost Omega's pet is awake, and giving orders, no less. I said stand down, Kaelin repeated, stepping forward. Thorn's eyes narrowed. You're on Silvermoon territory, rogue. You have no authority here. His gaze shifted to Lyra. Noting her changed appearance, her skin seemed to glow faintly. Her previously dull hair now shimmered with silver undertones. What did you do to her, beast? He did nothing, Lyra said, moving protectively in front of Pip. What do you want, Thorn? The Elder Council has questions about yesterday's display. You're to come immediately. She's not going anywhere, Kaelin growled. Thorn smiled coldly. She doesn't have a choice. Neither do you. Guards. More wolves emerged from the forest, dozens of them, all in warrior form. Lyra's heart sank. Even if Kaelin was what he claimed, he was still recovering, and she couldn't shift to help him. It's all right, she said quietly, placing a hand on Kaelin's arm. I'll go. Lyra, take care of Pip, she interrupted. Please. She saw the war in his eyes, the Alpha King, who could level this entire pack if he revealed himself, but doing so would paint a target on her back forever. The mate who wanted to protect her, and the strategist who knew sometimes battles were won through patience. If they harm you, he said in the old language, words she somehow understood through their bond, I will paint the earth with their blood. I know, she replied in kind, surprising them both. Thorn grabbed her arm roughly, claws digging in just enough to hurt. Move, ghost. Move. As they dragged her away, Lyra looked back once. Kaelin stood perfectly still, but she could feel his rage through their bond, a storm barely contained. Pip clung to his leg, and surprisingly, the Alpha King's hand rested gently on the boy's head. She sent a pulse of reassurance through their bond. "I'll be fine." His response was immediate. "You are mine, as I am yours. They will learn what that means soon enough." The Silvermoon Elder Council convened in the sacred grove, 5 ancient wolves who governed pack law across the southern territories. Lyra knelt in the circle's center, her wrists bound with silver-threaded rope that burned against her newly sensitive skin. "Lyra Winters," Elder Blackwood intoned, his milky eyes unseeing but his nose twitching. "You smell different. Changed." "The rogue did something to her," Thorn insisted from his place at the circle's edge. "She reeks of power she shouldn't possess." Elder Sage Morwyn, who'd overseen the auction, and also served on the Silvermoon Council, studied Lyra carefully. "Child, have you been marked? Child, have you been marked? Child, 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 child." Lyra's hair carefully covered Kaelin's bite, but these were ancient wolves. They could sense deeper truths. "I don't understand the question." "Don't play games?" Elder Blackwood snarled. "You purchased an alpha. Did he claim you?" "He was dying," Lyra said carefully. "I healed him." "With what power?" Elder Moonwhisper asked, her voice deceptively gentle. "You're registered as having no gifts beyond basic herb knowledge. My grandmother taught me." "Your grandmother was exiled for witchcraft," Elder Stormcrow interrupted. "Did she pass her corruption to you?" "Healing isn't corruption," Lyra said, then gasped as the silver ropes tightened, automatically punishment for speaking out of turn. "Show us your neck," Elder Morwyn commanded. When Lyra hesitated, Thorn stepped forward and roughly pulled her hair aside. The collective intake of breath was audible. Kaelin's mark glowed faintly silver in the morning light, beautiful and damning. "Claimed," Elder Blackwood spat, "an omega bearing an alpha's mark. It's an abomination." "The law is clear," Elder Stormcrow said. "A claimed omega without pack approval must be exiled or executed." "Wait," Elder Morwyn interjected. "There's something else. Look closer." They all leaned in, and Elder Moonwhisper gasped. "Impossible. The mark is reciprocal. It goes both ways." "It common?" "That cannot be," Elder Blackwood insisted. "Omegas can't mark alphas." "This one did," Elder Morwyn said quietly. "Which means she's not just any omega." Her ancient eyes fixed on Lyra with something like fear. "She's the one from the prophecy." Most werewolf stories begin with power and dominance, but Xiomara's prophecies are children's tales, Thorn scoffed. "When the moon bleeds red, and the weakest becomes strongest. When Omega marks Alpha, and breaks the ancient order, the lunar wolf shall rise," Elder Moonwhisper recited. "Every pup knows the words." "Then we must kill her now," Elder Blackwood said flatly, "before she destroys everything we've built." "You can't!" The voice rang across the grove. Kaelin strode into the sacred circle, and this time, he wasn't hiding. Power radiated from him in waves, his presence so overwhelming that even the elders stepped back. "How dare you enter sacred ground?" Elder Stormcrow began. Kaelin's laugh was cold. "Sacred ground? I blessed this grove myself 3 centuries ago." "Impossible," Elder Blackwood whispered. "You're just a rogue." "I am Kaelin Nightfrost, Alpha King of the 7 Northern Territories, Lord of the First Pack, bearer of the moon's blessing." His voice carried absolute authority. "And you have bound my mate." The silence was deafening. Then, one by one, every wolf present except the bound Lyra dropped to their bellies in submission. "Your Majesty," Elder Morwyn whispered. "We didn't know." "Release her. Now." The ropes fell away immediately. Kaelin helped Lyra to her feet, his hands gentle, but his eyes promising violence to anyone who protested. "She comes with me," he announced. "But sire," Elder Blackwood dared to speak. "If she's truly the lunar omega, the prophecy says." "I know what it says." Kaelin's arm wrapped around Lyra's waist. It says she'll destroy the old order. Good, Cantidi. The old order needs destroying. He turned to Lyra. Come with me. Let me show you who you really are. Pip, the boy comes too. His violet eyes softened slightly. I protect what's mine. As they walked from the grove, Thorn made one last desperate attempt. You can't just take her. She belongs to Silvermoon Pack. Kaelin paused, looking back with a smile that was all predator. She belongs to no one but herself. But she is mine, as I am hers. And if you try to stop us. He let his true power unfurl, just for a moment. Several wolves whimpered. One fainted. That's what I thought, Kaelin murmured. The journey to the Northern Territories took 3 days through the wild forests. Kaelin had summoned his royal guard, a pack of massive wolves who treated Lyra with a mixture of reverence and confusion. An omega marked by their king, bearing his scent but also somehow marking him in return, was unprecedented. By the second day, the symptoms started. It began as an ache in her bones, similar to what she'd felt during the attempted shift but deeper, more insistent. By evening, she could barely stay mounted on the horse Kaelin had procured for her. What's happening to me? She gasped, doubling over as another wave of pain hit. Kaelin was beside her instantly, his hands glowing with a faint silver light as he tried to ease her suffering. Your wolf is fighting to emerge. The mark accelerated something that was already beginning. I thought I couldn't shift. You were suppressed, he said grimly. I can smell it now, wolfsbane tea, fed to you since childhood. Small doses, not enough to kill but enough to cage your wolf. Someone knew what you were and wanted to keep you weak. That night, the dreams began. Lyra stood in a place of silver light, surrounded by ancient wolves whose eyes held the wisdom of millennia. At their center sat a white wolf so pure she seemed to glow from within. Finally, the white wolf spoke directly into her mind. The last of my daughters awakens. Who are you? I am Luna, the first mother, and you, little one, carry my blessing. Once every 1,000 years, an Omega is born with the power to reshape our world. You are that Omega. I don't want power. I just want to survive. Luna's laugh was like moonlight on water. Survival isn't enough anymore. The corruption spreads, child. Omegas disappear. Alphas grow cruel. The balance breaks. You and your mate must restore it. Kaelin isn't my true mate. He marked me by accident. Accidents don't exist in mate bonds. He is your other half, as you are his. Together, you are complete. Apart. The dream shattered as pain ripped through Lyra's physical body. She woke screaming, her body contorting. Kaelin held her through it, whispering promises and endearments in the old language. Pip hovered nearby, tears streaming down his young face. It's killing her, she heard Captain Fenris whisper to Kaelin. The transformation if she can't complete it. She will, Kaelin said firmly. But Lyra felt his fear through their bond. By the third day, she could barely remain conscious. Her body cycled between burning fever and freezing chills. Sometimes she saw through human eyes, sometimes through wolf eyes, caught between forms in a way that shouldn't be possible. We're almost there, Kaelin murmured, carrying her on his horse now. The palace healers will know what to do. But when the northern palace came into view, a massive structure of moonstone and obsidian, carved into a mountain, Lyra felt her symptoms worsen rather than ease. Power emanated from the place, ancient and overwhelming. Too much, she gasped. The power here, it's too much. It's responding to you, Kaelin realized with wonder. The palace recognizes the lunar Omega. Guards poured from the gates, and among them, a woman with silver hair and violet eyes, so like Kaelin's they could only be related. Brother, she said coldly. You've been gone for weeks without word, and you return with her nose wrinkled. An Omega? Celine? Kaelin's voice carried warning. This is Lyra, my mate. The silence was deafening. Then Celine laughed, sharp and disbelieving. You made it an Omega? Have you lost your mind? The council will revolt. The northern packs will. Look closer, Kaelin commanded. Celine's eyes widened as she truly examined Lyra, seeing both marks. sensing the power struggling to emerge. By the moon, she breathed. She's the one from the prophecy. Yes, Kaelin confirmed. And if we don't help her complete her transformation soon, she'll die. The palace healers worked through the night, but nothing helped. Every remedy, every technique, failed against the war raging inside Lyra's body. She lay in the royal healing chambers, her skin alternating between human and fur, bones breaking and reforming in an endless cycle. I don't understand, Master Healer Rowan said, exhausted. It's as if two different types of power are fighting within her. Her Omega nature and something else entirely. Kaelin hadn't left her side, his own strength waning as he continuously pushed energy through their bond to keep her stable. There must be something we can do. There is, a new voice said from the doorway. Everyone turned to see an ancient woman, bent with age, her hair white as fresh snow. The healers immediately bowed. Elder Celestine, Rowan breathed. We didn't know you were still alive? Barely. She approached the bed, her milky eyes somehow seeing everything. I felt her arrival, the last lunar Omega. I've been waiting 900 years to see another. You knew one before? Kaelin asked desperately. I was there when the last one died, Celestine said grimly. Killed by those who feared her power. But this one? She's stronger. She's already survived what killed the others. What others? You think she's the first Omega to be born with Luna's blessing? No, child. But she's the first to survive the suppression, the first to find her true mate before the transformation began, the first to mark an Alpha King in return. Celestine's ancient hand touched Lyra's fevered brow. She needs the moon throne. That's forbidden, Celine protested. No Omega has ever... No ordinary Omega, Celestine corrected. But she's far from ordinary. The moon throne sat in the highest tower of the palace, carved from a single piece of moonstone, said to have fallen from the sky when the first wolves were created. It was where Alpha Kings drew their power, where the connection to the moon was strongest. Kaelin carried Lyra up the 1,000 steps, his guard following despite the taboo they were breaking. The throne room was circular, open to the sky, and the throne itself seemed to pulse with otherworldly light. This will either complete her transformation or kill her, Celestine warned. Then we give her the choice, Kaelin said. He gently shook Lyra awake. Little moon, you need to decide. Lyra's eyes fluttered open, switching between brown and silver. It hurts, she whispered. I know, the throne might help, but it's dangerous. An Omega has never... I'm tired of hearing what Omegas have never done, she interrupted with a flash of her old spirit. Help me stand. He supported her to the throne. The moment she was close, the moonstone began to sing a high, pure note that resonated in their bones. It recognizes her, Celestine breathed. Lyra collapsed into the throne, and light exploded outward. Not the gentle glow of moonstone, but brilliant, searing radiance that turned night into day. Her scream echoed across the palace, across the entire northern territory. Through their bond, Kaelin felt her transformation not just into a wolf, but into something more. The suppressed power of 23 years erupted at once. Her wolf wasn't just emerging, it was ascending. When the light faded, a wolf sat on the throne. But not just any wolf, she was pure white, with silver markings that seemed to shift like liquid moonlight. Her eyes were gold, ancient and knowing, and on her forehead, a crescent moon mark glowed with its own light. The lunar wolf. Someone whispered in awe. Lyra shifted back to human form, but she was changed. Her hair had turned silver white, her skin held a subtle luminescence. And her scent, it was no longer barely there but rich and powerful, like moonflowers and starlight. Parsley. How do you feel? Kaelin asked, approaching carefully. She stood from the throne, with fluid grace, power radiating from her every movement. Complete, she said, then smiled. And very, very angry. Angry? Someone suppressed me for 23 years. Someone knew what I was and tried to destroy it. Her golden eyes flashed. I want to know who and why. Before Kaelin could respond, A guard burst in. Your Majesty, the Southern Pax, they've sent an army. They claim you've kidnapped their Omega and demand her return. Lyra laughed, the sound carrying power that made everyone except Kaelin step back. They want their ghost Omega back? They want their ghost Omega back. They want their ghost Omega back. She moved to the window, looking out at the approaching forces. Then let's show them what their ghost has become. The Southern Pax army assembled at the palace gates by dawn, 500 wolves led by the Elder Council themselves. At their head stood Thorn, now wearing the regalia of a pack commander, his promotion clearly a reward for reporting Lyra's transformation. We demand the return of our Omega, Elder Blackwood's voice boomed across the courtyard. She was taken illegally from our territory. Kaelin stood on the palace ramparts, Lyra beside him. She'd insisted on facing them, though he could feel her rage through their bond controlled but burning. I left willingly, Lyra called down, her new voice carrying power that made several wolves whimper. You were coerced by an Alpha's dominance, Thorn responded. No Omega can resist an Alpha King's command. Return home, Lyra, and all will be forgiven. Home? Lyra laughed bitterly. You mean the place where I was fed wolfsbane tea since childhood? Where I was beaten for showing signs of power? Where you called me ghost and made me serve scraps to the dogs? Lies, Elder Stormcrow interjected. The Omega is clearly under the Alpha King's influence. Show them, Celestine whispered from behind them. Show them what you are. Lyra looked at Kaelin, who nodded. She took a breath, then let her power unfurl. The morning sky darkened, as if responding to her will. Her hair lifted with invisible wind, and when she opened her eyes, they blazed pure gold. I am the lunar Omega, her voice echoed with otherworldly power. And I remember everything now. Elder Blackwood, you gave the order to suppress me when I was 3 days old. You sensed what I would become and feared it. The prophecy had to be prevented, Blackwood admitted, dropping all pretense. The lunar Omega would destroy the natural order. Alphas rule, Omegas serve. That is the way. That is your way, Lyra corrected. But not the moon's way? Then you admit you're an abomination, Thorn called. A threat to our entire civilization. The Southern Pax united to bring you back dead or alive. Dead then, Elder Blackwood decided. Attack. The army surged forward, but Kaelin raised his hand. His own warriors, outnumbered but fierce, prepared to defend. The clash would be bloody, devastating to both sides. Wait, Lyra placed her hand on Kaelin's arm. This is my fight. Lyra. Trust me. She leaped from the rampart, landing gracefully in the courtyard despite the 40-foot drop. The southern wolves circled her, hundreds against one. You want the ghost Omega? She asked softly. The weak, pathetic creature you tormented for years? She shifted, and gasps echoed across the courtyard. Her wolf form was magnificent, larger than most alphas, pure white, with those liquid silver markings. The crescent moon on her forehead blazed with divine light. Kill her, Blackwood commanded. The wolves attacked en masse, but Lyra moved like moonlight itself, fluid, untouchable. She didn't fight them so much as dance between them. Where her paws touched, silver light bloomed. Wolves who tried to bite found themselves frozen mid-leap. Those who attempted to claw discovered their own bodies wouldn't obey. Within minutes, 500 wolves lay subdued, but unharmed, held by threads of silver light. I could kill you all, Lyra's voice echoed in their minds. The power you feared, I now possess. But that's not who I am. She shifted back to human form, standing tall among the immobilized wolves. You have a choice. Accept that the old ways are ending, that Omegas are not lesser, that strength comes in many forms, or leave. Go back to your southern territories and never return. You can't change nature, Blackwood snarled. Alphas will always dominate Omegas. Will they? Lyra smiled, and it was terrifying. Kaelin, come here. The Alpha King leaped down, landing beside her with predatory grace. Kneel, she said softly. Without hesitation, the most powerful Alpha in 7 territories dropped to one knee before an Omega. The watching crowd gasped in unison. You see? Lyra addressed them all. True strength isn't about domination. It's about choice, respect, partnership. She helped Kaelin stand, their hands clasped. We choose each other, as equals. This is blasphemy, Thorn spat. This is evolution, Kaelin corrected. The world changes, or it dies. Then we choose war? Elder Blackwood declared. The Southern Pax will unite against this abomination. Every Omega who shows signs of power will be— He never finished. Lyra's power flared, and suddenly Blackwood was human, naked and vulnerable, his wolf ripped away. What did you do? He screamed. I gave you what you always wanted, Lyra said coldly. You'll never have to worry about the natural order again. You're human now, permanently. Go live with them and see how they treat those without power. The confrontation with the Southern Pax had ended with their retreat, but victory felt hollow. That night, as the palace celebrated, Lyra stood alone on her balcony, staring at the moon. You're thinking of leaving, Kaelin said from the doorway. She didn't turn. Through their bond, he could feel her turmoil, the weight of power she'd never asked for, the responsibility of being the lunar Omega. I heard him, she whispered. I stripped Blackwood of his wolf. What makes me different from those who suppressed me? You gave him life, Kaelin pointed out. They would have given you death. I'm becoming what they feared, an Omega with too much power. She finally faced him, tears streaming down her cheeks. What if they were right? What if I do destroy everything? Before he could respond, she collapsed. Not gradually, but suddenly, as if strings had been cut. Kaelin caught her, his heart racing as he felt her pulse weak, thready, fading. Lyra. Her skin was cold, her breathing shallow. Through their bond, he felt nothing. Empty space where her presence should be. Help! He roared. Someone help! Healers rushed in, Celestine among them. The ancient woman placed her hands on Lyra's chest and immediately pulled back, shocked. Power. The power, she gasped. It's consuming her from within. Her body wasn't meant to channel that much energy. But she's the lunar Omega. Yes, but she spent 23 years suppressed. Imagine a dam holding back a river for decades, then suddenly breaking. The flood. Celestine shook her head. She's drowning in her own power. She's power. There must be something. There is. Celine appeared, holding an ancient text. But you won't like it, Power Hafid. She opened the book, revealing illustrations of the first lunar Omega. She can release the power back to the moon, become normal again. An ordinary Omega, or possibly human. The transformation would reverse. She'd lose her wolf? She'd lose everything, her power, her wolf, possibly even. Celine hesitated. The mate bond. It was formed between the Alpha King and the lunar Omega. Without that part of her, Kaelin felt his heart shatter. To save her, he'd have to lose her. Do it, he said. Kaelin. Do it, he cradled Lyra's dying body. I'd rather lose her than watch her die. They carried her back to the moon throne room. The ritual was complex, requiring the blood of her mate freely given, the tears of those who loved her, and her own conscious choice. She's too weak, Rowan protested. She can't consent. Then we enter her mind, Celestine decided. Through the mate bond. But Kaelin. If she chooses to release her power, you'll lose everything you share. The bond, the connection, even the memories might fade. Access. I know. He sat in the throne with Lyra in his arms. But she'll live. They began the ritual. Through their bond, Kaelin entered the space between consciousness and dreams, finding Lyra in that silver place where she'd met Luna. You came, she whispered, translucent and fading, always. He pulled her into his arms. Little moon, you need to choose. I know. She looked at the white wolf Luna herself, waiting patiently. If I release the power, we lose everything. You'll live. Without you? Without my wolf? What kind of life is that? A life, he said firmly. That's all that matters. Is it? She touched his face. Would you choose a life without me? His silence was answer enough. Then why should I? She turned to Luna. There must be another way. There is, the first mother said. But the price? Name it. You keep the power, but it will forever mark you as other. Humans will fear you, wolves will worship or hate you. You'll never have a normal life. I never had one anyway, Lyra said. What else? Your mate must share the burden. The Alpha King must become something new, just as you have. Equal in power, equal in responsibility. Two halves of one whole, literally. That's not a price, Kaelin said immediately. That's a gift. Luna smiled. Then choose, little ones. Together. They didn't hesitate. Their hands clasped, and they spoke in unison. We choose each other. Power exploded through both of them, not just Lyra's, but something new, something shared. When Kaelin opened his eyes in the physical world, he found himself changed. His hair had silver streaks, his eyes now held gold flecks among the violet, and on his forehead, a sun mark blazed the counterpart to Lyra's moon. Lyra's eyes snapped open, no longer just gold but swirling with silver and starlight. She gasped, sitting up in Kaelin's arms, her body thrumming with controlled power rather than being consumed by it. You stayed, she breathed. Always, he replied. And she could see his transformation. The solar alpha, her perfect counterpart. Around them, the witnesses had fallen to their knees, even proud Selene. They weren't just looking at an alpha and omega anymore, but at something divine, the physical embodiment of balance the prophecy had foretold. Rise, Lyra commanded gently, and they obeyed. This isn't about worship, it's about change. Over the following days, word spread across all territories. The lunar omega and solar alpha had risen. Some packs sent tributes, others sent threats. But the most unexpected response came from the omegas themselves. They arrived in droves, omegas who'd been suppressed, abused, treated as lesser. They came seeking sanctuary, and Lyra gave it freely. The Northern Palace became a refuge where omegas learned they had value beyond servitude. Among them came a familiar face, Pip, but not alone. He brought 20 other pups, all orphans from various packs, all considered too weak to matter. You came back, Lyra embraced him. You said I could be part of your pack, Pip reminded her. All of us, we want to be part of something new. But not everyone accepted the change. A month after her transformation, assassins came in, the night wolves trained specifically to kill divine beings, their claws coated in the same poison that had nearly killed Kaelin. They never reached their targets. Lyra felt them coming through her expanded senses. She and Kaelin moved in perfect synchronization, their powers complementing each other. Where she was moonlight and illusion, he was sunfire and strength. Together, they were unstoppable. Who sent you? Kaelin demanded of the surviving assassin. Those who believe in the old ways, the wolf spat. You think you can change thousands of years of tradition? Alphas rule, omegas serve. That's nature. Nature changes, Lyra said softly, kneeling beside him. Everything evolves or dies. She placed her hand on his chest, and the wolf tensed, expecting death. Instead, warmth flooded through him, not just healing, but understanding. For a moment, he saw through her memories. The years of abuse, the pain of suppression, the joy of finally being free. When she pulled back, the assassin was crying. I didn't know, he whispered. They told us omegas didn't feel like we do, didn't think like we do. Now you know better, she said simply. Go. Tell others what you've learned. As the seasons turned, the change Lyra and Kaelin represented spread like wildfire. Packs began accepting omega leaders. Alphas learned to lead through respect rather than dominance. The rigid hierarchies that had defined wolf society for millennia began to soften. There were still holdouts, still those who clung to the old ways, but they grew fewer as the younger generation embraced the new balance. On the first anniversary of her transformation, Lyra stood before a gathering of all the territories. Alphas, betas, and omegas stood side by side, no longer separated by arbitrary ranks. A year ago, I was the ghost omega, she addressed them. Worthless, weak, nothing. But I was never nothing. None of us are. We all have power, in different forms, in different ways. Kaelin stood beside her, their hands clasped. The age of domination is ending, he declared. The age of partnership begins now. As if in response, the moon rose full and bright, bathing them all in silver light. But this time, the sun didn't set. It remained, sharing the sky with the moon, in a display that hadn't been seen since the first wolves walked the earth. Together, Lyra whispered, but her voice carried to every ear. Powers vows. Together, thousands of voices responded. Later, in the quiet of their chambers, Lyra traced the sun mark on Kaelin's forehead. Do you ever regret it? You were the Alpha King. Now you're something else entirely. I'm yours, he said simply. That's worth more than any throne. She kissed him, pouring all her love through their bond. When they pulled apart, both were glowing, she with moonlight, he with sunfire. What happens now? She asked. Now? He smiled, pulling her close. Now we build the world the prophecy promised. Where the weakest can become the strongest. Where an Omega can stand as equal to any Alpha. Where love matters more than hierarchy. That sounds like a lot of work. Good thing we have eternity. As they stood on their balcony, looking out over the territories they'd united, Lyra thought about the journey that had brought them here. From 3 copper coins at a slave auction to reshaping the entire world. I love you, she said, the words carrying power that made flowers bloom in the garden below. And I love you, little moon, he replied, his words causing the sunrise to paint the sky in impossible colors. They were no longer just the ghost Omega and the Alpha King. They were the future. And the future was brilliant. The girl who was mocked as the weakest Omega had become the strongest force for change their world had ever seen. Not through dominance or violence, but through love, balance, and the courage to be exactly who she was meant to be.